Hello, my name is John LeMay and welcome to my basement war room. Today I'm going to discuss Memorial Day during a time of social distance. So a few months ago, I thought that I would be talking to you about remembrance through suffering, doing Murph at CrossFit Controlled Chaos, and then going on a Memorial Day road march. But that's not to be. I think like many Americans, I'll be at home with my family this Memorial Day. And so how can Memorial Day still be meaningful? So today I'll just give you a little bit of background on Memorial Day, then discuss my recommendation, which is to remember a specific person, and then show you some tools on the internet, how you can find a specific soldier or service member to remember. Now, many of you may have a loved one or close friend or someone you know that you remember on Memorial Day. This video is really directed, the primary audience for this video is the many millions of Americans who don't have a personal connection to a service member who has fallen in our nation's wars. My observation is that in many holidays we take a moment to remember our fallen service members. For example, 4th of July, we may be celebrating our nation's independence and then say, hey, let's remember those who gave our lives for this freedom, for this independence. And that's great. And as an aside, there's no right or wrong way to do Memorial Day to remember people. This is just a way that may be useful to you. Anyway, so it's great, all these other times we stop, but I just encourage you to not let Memorial Day be at that sort of same level as remembering people at the 4th of July, and instead to really take Memorial Day deeper and be more focused on the memory of a fallen soldier. So, a little background on Memorial Day. Armed Forces Day, that's for people who are currently serving in the armed forces. It's the third Saturday of May, very close to Memorial Day, and so sometimes can be a little bit confusing. Veterans Day, it's for those who have served in the armed forces. It's the 11th of November. That is the armistice from World War I. And many nations choose that date as their Memorial Day. So again, it can be a little bit confusing because we'll see the Australians and many other nations remembering their fallen on that day. Memorial Day. So that is for those who have died in service of our country. And it's the last Monday in May. In the 1860s, it began as Decoration Day, sort of spontaneously as a grassroots movement where people were just decorating the graves of Civil War soldiers who had died during that war. One thing of note is that 3 p.m. local time, wherever you are, is the National Moment of Remembrance, where you can take a moment to remember our fallen on Memorial Day. Okay, so that's a little background, and mainly I give that background just to say that all these other holidays are different than Memorial Day. They have different purposes, and to encourage you on Memorial Day to go a little bit deeper into memory than you might say on Armed Forces Day or the 4th of July. Okay, so a little bit about background. Now let's talk about why remembering a specific soldier is important. Okay. So the U.S. military has lost about 1.3 million dead in our nation's wars. That's a big number. And honestly, I can't get past the statistic. I mean, how do I remember 1.3 million people? I can think about that a little bit, but I can't really remember anyone when it's 1.3 million people. To dive deeper a bit, let's talk about the 1st Infantry Division. The 1st Infantry Division has lost 13,000 people in our nation's war. And so while that's a little bit more granular looking at the Big Red One's contribution there, I still can't get past 13,000 except as a statistic. So one person is not a statistic. The details make it real. Learning the person's name, how they died, where they were serving, what unit they were in, something about their family, that makes it very real. It allows me to focus prayer. I can pray for that person, for their family, for their unit. It also enables me to have a meaningful family discussion. I have a 1-month-old, a 2-year-old, and a 4-year-old, and none of them can do abstract thinking, comprehend statistics, those types of things. But at least with a 4-year-old, I can talk about a person, about that person's name, what happened to them, the sacrifice they made for our country. So I can have a meaningful family discussion around one person in a way I can't about 1.3 million. And then it gives me a focus for the national moment of remembrance. I can, at 3 p.m., actually think about a service member who died for our country by name and in a meaningful way. Okay, almost as this aside here, I just want to talk about civilians briefly. So reading the literature, Memorial Day is for service members, it's for military personnel. But my heart goes broader and really encompasses everyone that died in our conflicts. In Iraq and Afghanistan, I served alongside FBI, Department of State, Department of Agriculture. I mean, the list goes on. I also served with, dirty, nasty contractors. And let me briefly give you an example of a dirty, nasty contractor that I served with in Afghanistan. And so this gentleman was a police officer from New York City. He was, of course, lived through September 11th as a police officer in New York City. After that, he's highly motivated to make a contribution to the war on terror. The U.S. Army was struggling in Afghanistan, doing all these police-like functions, needed more expertise, and asked police officers across our nation to come help. And so this gentleman did. He answered the call, and the vehicle that we used, different than maybe World War II where we just conscripted everyone, but the vehicle we used to get this police officer from New York City to Afghanistan was contracting. He was a contractor. And he's on patrol with an infantry patrol from my battalion, and he was wounded by an IED. Now luckily, he fully recovered from his wounds and is okay. He did not die in service of his country, but many contractors did die, and that's just an example, that police officer, of a contractor who went to fight in our nation's wars and made a valuable contribution, and many of them died. Okay, so that was almost a complete aside. I just encourage you to have a broad heart when it comes to remembering our fallen. And I do. I have a broad sort of definition in my heart, include all those government civilians and all those contractors. Now, we've talked about why one person's important. Now let's look at some tools on the internet that you can use to find a specific soldier or service member to remember. Now I'm going to discuss how to find a specific service member to remember on Memorial Day. So the first step is to try and establish a personal connection, to identify a name, unit, or location that means something to you. So is there a military unit near you? Is there a memorial near you? Do you have a family connection? For example, did Grandpa serve in World War II? Do you have a friend that's in the military? In this example, I'm going to use my great-grandfather-in-law's World War I helmet. So I have this family relic, and on it, there's a red patch. And so I look up U.S. Army World War I patch chart. Consulting the chart, I can see that it matches the 27th Division. So my great-grandpa-in-law served in the 27th Division in World War I. Next, I'm going to look up the 27th Division's history in Wikipedia. Okay, so here's the 27th Division. Then going down to the bottom, I'll find that today the 27th Division has been redesignated as the 27th Infantry Brigade. So I click over on the 27th Infantry Brigade and hit the link from the previous page, and I'll learn a little bit about the 27th Infantry Brigade, including what its current order of battle is. You can see that the 69th Infantry Regiment today is part of this brigade. Okay, so to find a soldier's name, I'm going to go to the Defense Casualty Analysis System. So here's the Defense Casualty Analysis System. And on the left, there's a number of modern operations. And if you click on one of those operations, you'll come down to this Names of the Fallen option. Now, this is only available for modern or more recent operations. For example, I cannot pull up World War II Names of the Fallen from this database. So Operation Iraqi Freedom, Names of the Fallen. And look at this query tool. You have service, component, name, rank, age, gender, home of record city, home of record county, the unit, and these other options. And so I tried the 27th Division, 27th Brigade, and without adjusting all these other items, I didn't find a useful return. So I went a little more specific and tried the 69th Infantry, as you can see here, and that immediately got me a number of results that I realized are the correct unit because it's from New York, the component's National Guard. So from Wikipedia, I know all that is correct today on the unit lineage. And so the first soldier's name that comes up here is Specialist Ali. So that was step 2. I looked up the soldier's name in this, and now I'm just going to Google the soldier's obituary. Okay, and so here it is, a quick Google search, and I learned some interesting things about this soldier. He's from Pakistan, immigrated to the U.S. when he was 14, has 8 siblings. He patrolled Grand Central Terminal after September 11th and was killed by an IED in Baghdad. And so that's a lot of specific information that you can think about and remember for a soldier. Okay, I'm going to show you another quick tool here, and that's just the Military Times Honor the Fallen. It's a little bit of a simpler database. You can't query by unit. You have less information, but it's much easier to use. The Defense Casualty Analysis System is a bit unwieldy or chunky, but very powerful. This is less powerful, but easy. And if you put in, for example, just a soldier's name or something, it immediately pops up just the basic information. So you don't have to do that secondary step of finding the obituary with a Google search. The final step here, step 4, is to remember. And with this kind of information that we just learned about Specialist Ali, you can easily do a specific detailed prayer for his siblings, his father, his unit. You can have a meaningful family conversation. It's hard to talk, with my young children at least, statistics of 1.3 million, but we can definitely talk about Specialist Ali. And during the 3 p.m. National Moment of Remembrance, I now have a soldier to specifically remember and think about. Well, thank you very much for joining me for this video. I hope you find it helpful. Again, there's no right way or one way or anything like that on how to remember people on Memorial Day. But if you don't have a direct connection to someone that's fallen in the service of our country, these techniques may help you to find someone specific to remember, and doing so might make Memorial Day just a bit more meaningful for you. So I encourage you to do that, to find one individual and remember that individual on Memorial Day. Thank you very much.